Here we have our rose gum or flooded gum, Eucalyptus grandis. This is certainly a grand eucalyptus. They are a member of the Myrtaceae family, which is one of the most dominant families of plants in Australia. It covers our lily pillies, our eucalypts, and a whole heap of heathland plants. Just about every single environment of Australia, apart from the southwest of Tasmania, is dominated by the Myrtaceae family. These guys certainly don't dominate Mary Cancross. They're a fringe plant in Mary Cancross. They're on the edges, and this little group that's left here, certainly as a visitor to the park myself many years ago, as a teenager, I would often wonder what these trees were doing in the middle of the rainforest. Well, having explored the park a lot more, they're not in the middle of the rainforest. It's actually a wetland that goes off to the east that runs through the eastern side of Mary Cancross that these are running along the edge of. Potentially these trees germinated 500 or 600 years ago in a period of major disturbance, a much drier time, a time where there was potential for fire in an area like this in the rainforest, and these trees germinated in those conditions because they are a very small seed. In spite of the big tree that we see, they come from a very tiny seed, need very high light levels, as opposed to our black bean with very large seed, our rose gum, very, very tiny seed, other end of the spectrum, bare soil, potentially after fires to come up. They will come up occasionally in disturbed areas, but they need a lot of light to get away. Very fast growing tree and long lived. The majority of these trees, because they've been around for a few hundred years, have actually got the tops missing. These are one of the taller trees that we can get on the Sunshine Coast, probably 60, 70 plus metres. But because they've been around for a few hundred years, they've probably copped a few cyclones every now and then and had the top smashed out of them. These eucalypts we'll often hear are associated with fire type environments, and the Eucalyptus grandis is a bit of a crossover plant because it does move into the edge of rainforest. It's coming up during those periods of high disturbance every few hundred years or so, and then lasting in the rainforest as a result of that as a canopy tree, with the rainforest coming back underneath that, and it takes a dry period where there's the potential for fire to stimulate the conditions for them to come up again. As opposed to a lot of our lily pillies, rainforest Myrtaceae, this is a sclerophyll Myrtaceae, so it's still got the hard leaf and it's still reflecting a lot of those sclerophyll communities, the hard leaf communities throughout the vast majority of Australia. And these bring in a whole heap of new fauna to the rainforest that wouldn't be associated necessarily with our rainforest trees, such as squirrel gliders, sugar gliders, and all those gliders that are making use of the resources available through the eucalypts of this rose gum. There has been the occasional koala seen in here, or on the edge maybe moving through, so there's certainly very, very good koala food. And they're also a great resource for things like flying foxes, which has been discovered in the last decade or so. That flying foxes are one of the major pollinators for our eucalypts. That we tend to think of that big flowering that they do is aimed at birds and bees and all that sort of stuff, but their peak pollination period is during the night, so it's much more aimed at something like a flying fox or perhaps a moth, but let's say the flying foxes, and just showing how important those flying foxes are in our environment as well.